All right, Miss Salma, thank you so very much for joining me at the trainer session. Now, to begin with, how did this teaching journey begin?
It was, I mean, at the beginning, I would say it wasn't something I was thinking about or I thought about. I had my studies going on, and then I was like, okay, now I've done with my studies, I've majored in English. What are the opportunities out there? So I did a bit of research. I asked my friends, and they kept on saying, but your English is this good. Why don't you go into that type of like profession and stuff? And I'm like, but I don't know how to. They're like, no, Google. I'm like, Googling doesn't really help. It gives you multiple sides of information.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
true.
was like, no, let me try. And then I came across like a few places and I did my research and I'm like, okay. Then I applied for an online opportunity and I started like, with basic classes and stuff. And then I absolutely loved it. I mean, the
Hmm.
beginning was like my major like bright light and I was like, no, I love this. I love talking to students. I love meeting people from
And did
different
you feel
places.
it in your first experience when you were dealing with the students for the first time?
No. I was very nervous. I think my first session I had with my student, I was still trying to figure out how does online teaching work, what is expected of me as a teacher, what is expected of them. So in the beginning, the first session, I would say it didn't click. But when I had like my second session, it just went natural. Like I
Hmm.
could speak to them, they could listen to
We will
me.
talk about the second lecture later.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first lecture. It's really important to know that when someone started, he was also not as perfect as maybe
Mm,
the person is
absolutely.
nowadays. So sometimes we all avoid to be in a situation where we are nervous and where we are gonna become the first timer, and
Mm,
we only try to do those things which we
yeah.
already have a good grip on.
Yes.
So tell me, like, about the experience of the first session, your nervousness, how did you deal with that, and what motivated you that the second session should go natural instead of a prepared one?
Yes. I think for me, the most important thing is I had my books, my paper, everything with me. I was ready. I'm like, I'm going to do A, B, C with them. I'm ready for this lesson, well prepared. I went in there. I was looking at everything. And then I was like, no, I need to be strict but firm. At the same time, I need to like give them that reassurance, like I'm listening to you. We're
Mhm.
going to talk about it. So I was very well prepared, I would say, and I was there and I was giving my ears. But then I realized, you don't have to be there with them with books. You can also be with them with the lesson and listen to them and give them feedback because that connection is very important,
True.
that first appearance or first genuineness that they feel from you as a teacher is very important. So then I was like, 15 minutes in the lesson, I'm like, okay, just talk to me. Let's have a conversation.
Hmm.
And I put my books, I put my notes down, and I'm like, let's just focus on what we need to focus on. And I think so for me, that was like, okay, now I'm genuinely happy. I can see that my student is focused on the lesson and I can see that they're hearing me. So that was a typical feeling. But inside, I was like this. I was shaking. I was like, what's going to happen? What's the feedback that's going to
Hmm.
get given to me as a teacher? What's the first impression they have of me? So although I was like ready and I had a smile, but
Hmm.
inside I was like, oh, what do they hope? Or what do they
Hmm.
think of me? So
Hmm.
that was really something that it kept in my mind until today. When I see that recording of the lesson, I laugh. I'm like, is that me? You know, did I teach that lesson?
Hmm.
So it was a very funny and exciting experience that I had with the lesson.
Wonderful. When it comes to now, when being on stage, like whenever you are going to talk to the people, and specifically even in the classroom, I once heard that don't think about yourself, what knowledge you have, and so think about them, what value you can give to them, and maybe just engage them into some questions and all. So, do you think it
Yeah.
works every time? Instead of thinking about yourself, just start make them think about themselves?
Definitely. I think 99% of the time, yes, it does work
Hmm.
because we're giving them the center and we're taking the focus away from us. So when I got to know that works better, I think my students performed outstandingly well and
Hmm.
they could like understand where we're coming from as a teacher and they were more engaged. Before, sir,
Hmm.
it was like, okay, we're just doing vocabulary, grammar, reading, listening, and that's it. But now we're like, okay, I'm giving you the space. Let's do the work, but I'm listening to you. I'm focusing on you. My
Hmm.
eyes are on you. My ears are on you. So that definitely, I would say 99% of the time works.
Hmm.
And because I'm a counselor, it's person centered approach.
Right.
PCT, PCA. So for me, that was like at least it works in favor
It worked
doing
in the
counseling
sessions.
and teaching. Yes, so that would be definitely something I would agree with, 100%.
That's great.
It just
Now,
gives them that.
yeah, that's a good approach to make it the person-centered approach or student-centered approach. Now, as you mentioned previously, that when you watch your own videos, you just laugh that is it
Mm.
me who's delivering the lecture? So now my question is, did you ever make any funny mistake while delivering a lecture that when you recalled it later, you were like, oh man, what did I do? Or something like that?
Many, many times, and I would say it would either be that mispronounced the word, or I was trying to make them laugh. Then I said a joke, but then I was like, "Oh no, this joke was not funny enough for them." Or when I was reading and I told them, "Okay, I shared my screen, but the screen was blank," and I'm like, "What am I sharing? What are my poor students looking at?" So when I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh." They were so wonderful to me. And there was an incident where I was like watching an entire 2-minute video with them, but then I realized there was no sound. And the poor
Hmm.
student, only after the video ended, he was like, "Teacher, there's no sound." And I'm like, "Oh goodness," I was like literally listening it to myself. So there have been like funny incidents. There have been incidents where I had like mom or dads or like children, jumping around, and when they keep the camera on, the children are behind the camera and they're like, "Sorry, teacher." And I'm like, "It's okay." Some of the students have family members or they have pets. The one time I kept on hearing a sound and I was like, I have to ask my student, but how do I ask her? Like animal sound. So I was like wondering. Then 5 minutes later, I'm like, "Can I ask you a question?" They're like, "Yes." "Is there a cat or a dog near you? Because I keep on hearing a sound." They're like, "Yes, my cat is like near me." So there were like incidents and they like funny conversations
Hmm.
about life and places and traveling because I love traveling. So I asked them, "Okay, if I come to your country, what type of food can I eat? Where can I go?" So yeah, that was like the
Yeah,
most
you have reminded me about one of my experience, it's quite common now. We know that we are learning at our own comfort while sitting at home and
yes.
doing even the home chores. I remember I was also listening to some sound when I was delivering an online lecture, and I asked a student, I mean, what is this sound? So he said, "Sir, I'm really sorry. That's the sound of washing machine. I'm washing clothes here."
Yeah. And
So,
then most of them, you realize that because they live in like apartments or they
hmm,
live in like small spaces, you can't expect everyone to have their own big space. So they're like the
hmm.
washing machine is there, the microwave is there, the kitchen is just there. And then when they open your cameras, you kind of don't want to laugh. So you keep like a straight face. And at the same time, you're like, "Oh, it's not going to be the same situation as us." So we have to like respect that. So
Yeah.
I think that.
Hmm. And like teachers are more like the actors. For example, when we are scolding a child, we are not
Mm,
angry. We are just pretending that
yes.
we are angry. And sometimes we have to laugh when we are not feeling to laugh, but just because like this is what is the requirement of the class. As a teacher, as a trainer, we listen to so many of the different excuses from the students. Do you remember any of the excuse that made you laugh? I mean, you knew why and how can a person say this as an excuse?
The I got, I think the most weirdest excuse is the one excuse. I had a student and I said, okay, do me a favor, the weekend is coming up, review the lesson when we meet for the next class. Please tell me. And he said, teacher, but I need to sleep. And I say to him, okay, we all have to go to bed, we all have to sleep. So I was like, okay, you're going to sleep for 6 hours, 8 hours, and then what are you going to do after that? So he's like, no, teacher, I have to watch TV. Then after TV, he's like, teacher, I have to play video games. So I'm like, you're just running away from your work, That's not an excuse. And I ended up laughing. I'm like, but what about us? I also need to sleep. We also need to have rest. And
Yeah.
then the other student is like, I asked her, okay, what are your plans for the weekend? And just, if you have time, practice your English or go through the
Hmm.
correction. And then she said, teacher, but I don't have internet. And I was like,
She
but
was
then
taking an online
yeah,
session.
yes, in the session she tells me I don't have internet. And then I'm like, I question her and I said, but Shelly, what are we using right now? And then she realized, oh, she even said something that's not correct. It doesn't make sense because we are connecting via the internet. And then I said to her, oh my goodness, if you had an excuse, you could have said something else.
Hmm.
So I have times where the student is like, either it's the weekend, so they don't want to do anything. So I
Hmm.
understand. And I'm like, it's okay. But just remember, you need to at least take 30 minutes or an hour and do some revision
Hmm.
because it stays in your mind. But so I mean, the one day I gave up on them and I'm like, okay, don't practice, but just watch the lesson recording. Just use your ears and your eyes, just watch the recording.
Hmm.
And I mean, like, take out 30 minutes of your time. And then they're like, but I need to go grab a cup of coffee and I need to go see my friends or I need to go here. So I'm like, you can do it while putting on your headphones and carrying your phone. So I always had to have that incident with them where I had to like give them like a proper explanation. But I
Hmm.
realized like sometimes they just want to do the lesson and just like relax and stuff. So I just gave
Yeah.
it to them.
Wonderful. Well, you really have a very strong personality because while laughing, you said something that I'm continuously thinking about. You said the awkward moment that might come in a session is when you deliver a joke and nobody laughs.
Yeah.
You realize, oh man, I delivered something which is not of their level.
Yeah.
You really need, the strength to say that, even if the joke doesn't get the response.
Yes.
So,
And then there's a moment of silence and you're like, no sound, what's happening? And then you just continue it like, okay, that was my
was it a
joke.
joke? All right. Haha. So maybe.
So
Okay.
you have to give yourself that.
Yeah. So I can ask you another question. I think like just because you said such a bold thing so casually, mashallah. Now, my question is, did it ever happen that a student asked you a question and that literally surprised you that, oh man, this question is really at the highest level of intellectuality and how shall I cover it? Did you ever experience this? And how did you
And
tackle that? And what was the question? I
I
would love to
have
know that.
I have to be very honest. So we had a very high student, I think it was near native,
Hmm.
and we were talking about nuclear and technology.
Hmm.
So the topic was about that. And he spoke about like nuclear power and energy and everything. Now, me being familiar with things, I'm like, I don't have much knowledge about the different energy sources or what is technology's impact on that. And he asked me about the machinery. How does the machinery work? How
Hmm.
does nuclear power get sourced, or what are the different types of energy that South Africa uses? Because
Hmm.
I'm a South African and I live here. And I promise you, sir, I blanked out. And I have to be honest, I had to go on the internet and search something. And then I was like, okay, give me a few minutes. Let me think about it. Because I didn't want to leave him hanging.
Hmm.
And then I quickly like said, okay, these are the different types of energy sources. But then I answered in and I said, I do apologize, but I'm not familiar with what type of energy sources South Africa uses, the renewable
Hmm.
sources. And I was very genuine about that. I said these are the sources that are obviously, known to the world, but I'm not familiar what South Africa actually uses.
Hmm.
So it stunned me because out of the blue, he asked me an intellectual question, and I know everything about like anything else, but I was like, I don't know what is he talking about, In
Hmm.
my mind, I'm like, what is a renewable source again? Must I go back to school and learn? Then I had to like keep a straight face and like quickly look up something, and then I said, honestly, I'm not
Hmm.
sure, but you have asked a wonderful question, a
Hmm.
question that is quite relatable and it needs to be talked about or heard about.
Yeah.
So I didn't dismiss him, but at the same time I didn't let him feel like I know nothing. I
Hmm.
let him know, okay, I do know some kind of information, but what you asking me, I don't have enough knowledge or enough information about. So yeah, but it was
Well,
like,
I must say, you really need, that strength, power, those guts to say that I don't
yeah,
have much of the knowledge about this topic. And by the way, I think this is the absolute perfect approach. Nobody in the world can have the knowledge about all the fields of life. Even if we are teaching English, let's say, English is such a vast language. Maybe there is some one perspective of the English language that we never thought about or that never got exposed to us. It's okay that we don't know. I mean, maybe we don't have to become those, uh, you know, obsolete teachers,
yes,
which made us believe that they know everything. But actually, it's not humanly possible. We are also human, and we are all learning as well. And that's a very good approach, and that really takes courage to say,
yeah,
I don't know. That's a beautiful thing to say. I think so.
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Now, let's proceed toward the further thing. And now we have a segment. And in this segment, we call it the Golden Tips segment. Now we're going to ask you to provide us some tips to improve the different, aspects of the
Yes.
English language. Let's take a start with the grammar. We would love to have the golden tip to improve the grammar.
Repeat, practice. Make sure that you read the rules and you imply them, because many of the students feel like, okay, we're learning a rule, but when it comes to applying them, that's where they struggle. So I
Mm,
always tell them practice is very important. Starting with the basics, review your sentences, do some practice, even if you have to learn the rule first, create your own sentences. But for me, that's very important because most of the students, they review the lesson, they know the grammar A to Z, but when it comes to application, that is where they do not do well. So
mm,
I think that is very important. And applying it when you speak and when you write. Many of the students need to understand that when you're speaking, grammar is what you're going to use and vocabulary. So
mm.
that is, I think, the golden, I would say, nutshell of practicing grammar.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah,
true. I think they need to minimize the gap between
yes,
learning, memorizing, cramming a rule, and then applying the rule. There is a difference in both of
yes.
these concepts, and they have to minimize that. Now, what's your golden tip to improve vocabulary?
If I could say, speak in English if you can, most of the time, which I understand is very hard when the native language is not English in
Hmm.
that specific country or that specific place. But I also tell them utilize the vocabulary in, social media, or
Hmm.
you utilize it when you're having a chat on WhatsApp or Snapchat, because
Hmm.
or with friends. That I think is very important to keep on building your vocabulary. And I have always advised them, although I'm a teacher, I still have my little notebook with vocabulary. The same way you can have your little notebook,
Hmm.
and making sure you create your own dictionary as you go along, especially when you want to go back and remember, oh, what can I use or what can I say for this? So
Hmm.
I think with the students, for me, it would be Write down the vocabulary, keep a little own dictionary, and try to use them in sentences as much as possible in class. If not possible to chat with friends or family, it's
Hmm.
okay. Develop that vocabulary when you listen to podcasts or TED
Hmm.
Talks or anything on YouTube or anything on social media. Try to see if you remember the meaning of that word. And if you don't, take note of it, you know?
Hmm.
Like my Arabic, it's not the best, but if I learn something through my student or something through social media, I remember it. And when I get a chance, I'll practice it, you know?
Hmm. Well, it's a very good tip. I must appreciate you for that. First of all,
Thank
what I understood is that whenever you're reading or listening to a new word, that is not a problem. That new
you.
word is new for you and you do not know the meaning. In fact, that's an opportunity. You're going to go
Yes.
to the Google, you're going to go to ChatGPT or AI to find out the meaning of this. So every new
Exactly.
word is not a problem. In fact, it's an opportunity. And
Yes.
secondly, the way you are carrying a notebook, I once heard that writing something down, even with a lead pencil, is
Mm,
far better than having the sharpest memory in the world. Because when you write
absolutely.
it down, you store it, you stash it, that you can read later. A very good approach. Now,
That's
proceeding further, what is your golden tip to improve speaking, to improve or build the fluency in speaking?
Speak more. Definitely. The golden tip I would say with speaking is let yourself go. You know,
Hmm.
do not focus so much on a set approach. Rather, let yourself be comfortable, be able to be heard or listened by, especially in a classroom.
Hmm.
Do not think so much about, okay, what type of words can I use or what type of grammar. Look at the question or look at what someone is asking you and try to answer it,
Hmm.
being very poised and very relaxed, because the words that come out from your mouth when you're speaking naturally is
Hmm.
quite different to when you have a feeling of, okay, am I saying the right thing or am I saying the wrong thing? Which is what we call self doubt. So I want that person to take the self doubt out and I want them to practice more. And that is why in many of my sessions, I tell the student, leave the books, leave your pens, leave everything. Just speak to me as a friend,
Hmm.
as one on one. Let's hear what you have to say. And my responsibility is to correct you if you don't say
Hmm.
the right word or the right sentence, but speak. And most of the time, my students do well when they not focused in a standard box,
Hmm.
but when they're speaking more naturally. So I would say that is definitely the golden tip. Speak with AI. you know, I told one of my students, okay, you don't have someone who speaks in English. It's fine. Go on to AI and say, hey, I'm your new friend today. Let's practice speaking in English,
Hmm.
record yourself, voice note yourself, listen to what you're saying, and then you will pick up where you're making mistakes or have an opportunity with a friend. You know what? Let's talk in English today, even if it's a funny conversation, even
Hmm.
if you say hi, hello, bye, goodbye, or basic words. But have that confidence in you that you can go up in a meeting and
Hmm.
you can try. And that
Yeah.
is where most of the people get worried when I say expose yourself in a new setting and take a challenge and do a speech or something. They're like, teacher, but how? I said, trust yourself and go for it.
Hmm.
Yes, maybe someone will like be like, you said the wrong thing, but that's a learning approach. You're
Hmm.
learning something from that, and that is the feedback, constructive feedback that you will take with you. So
That's
I think
remarkable. Hmm.
that is definitely the golden tip, I would say. And
Yeah.
many of the students laugh and they're like, teacher, but what is the word I can use? I said, say it in Arabic, then say it in English, or say it with English words, mix in your Arabic, mix in your
Hmm.
English. It's fine, but speak. Speak as much as you can.
Wonderful. So, as you said, like exposing yourself to a new city, talking to your friend, talking to AI, uh, it simply means we don't need to just focus on who are we talking to. It's about
Exactly.
training your mind, training your tongue to speak in English. So it requires more practice, and with the more practice, of course, everything will go smoothly and you will get fluency. Wonderful approach. Now, how to improve writing? What's your golden tip to improve writing and to have minimum spelling mistake, grammar mistake, punctuational mistakes in writing?
Definitely, it goes hand in hand with grammar because
Hmm,
without grammar, you wouldn't know the golden structure of writing,
hmm,
subject, verb, object, So me, I would say it goes hand in hand with your grammar rules. Whenever you're practicing grammar or vocabulary, start writing when you
hmm,
have to practice. Use that word or use that rule, create sentences, make up a dialogue, make up a story. Simple, like I always three steps: grammar, vocabulary, writing. So you
hmm,
practice your grammar, you review that, you practice your vocabulary, you review it. And then I said, okay, use the grammar and vocabulary and give me three sentences or four sentences of what you know from that. So I think most importantly is to perfect your writing, you have to perfect your grammar.
hmm,
And also, you have to know the meaning of a vocabulary word in order to utilize it. So, pronouns, I always say, parrot fashion way. You have to know your pronouns. You have to know your a and ands. You have to know your verbs. You have to know your adjectives. So, once you know the base, then you can start using it in your writing. So, I
hmm,
think for me, first and foremost, writing goes like a thumb. You use it in that aspect. If the thumb is not coming through, okay, we have to review our grammar first and then our vocabulary, and then we have to try.
hmm,
Yes, how can we speak without talking about ourselves, So, introductions, debates, discussions. Let's talk about work. Let's talk about
hmm,
family. Let's talk about myself. So, I think that definitely, sir, it would be commendable work if they could like utilize all three steps in one writing.
hmm.
And that will
Outstanding.
minimize the mistakes.
All right, now in the next segment, we are going to have a game which is this or that. I'm going to give you two options. You have to tell me which one is the best one: books or podcast,
Podcasts,
reading silently or reading aloud,
reading silently,
big class or small class,
big class.
quiet classroom or energetic classroom,
Energetic classroom.
smart student or hardworking student,
Hardworking student.
whiteboard or digital screen,
Whiteboard.
dictionary or Google,
Google.
Google or AI,
AI.
notebook or notes application,
Note application.
learn alone or learn with friends.
Learn with friends.
Wonderful. Now let's proceed toward the next segment, which is finish the sentence. I'm going to give you the first half of the sentence and you have to complete it. Whatever comes in your mind, you just have to deliver it. I knew I wanted to teach when.
I knew I wanted to teach English when I had my first lesson.
Hmm. My student always surprised me by.
My student always surprised me by giving me the most funniest examples in life.
Learning becomes exciting when.
When you do it with someone else.
Hmm. The classroom feels magical when.
When there is a lot of people that are talking and understanding each other.
Wonderful. The best compliment I have ever received is.
Teacher, you have a beautiful smile.
Wonderful. If I could tell my younger self one thing.
I would definitely have started earlier with this journey.
Hmm. And success doesn't happen because,
Success doesn't happen because it is what defines you. It happens because you are working hard towards it.
wonderful. Every learner should remember.
To be kind to themselves.
I wish students knew.
That learning a language requires you to practice and work hard. It doesn't come overnight.
Hmm. I smile every time when.
When my students do well.
Wonderful. Well, now we are proceeding toward the next segment, and this segment is a 1 minute teacher. Now, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and there are different topics that I'm going to suggest to you. You can select any one of these, and you will deliver us a 1 minute lecture on that. The topic could be pronunciation, vocabulary, confidence, memory, reading, whatever you select. What would be your topic that you would like to speak on for 1 minute?
Mm, vocabulary.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to give you 1 minute. Teacher, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Great. Your 1 minute timer starts now.
Vocabulary are different words that we learn all the time and are new words that we have to add into our personal book. And without vocabulary, speaking doesn't happen because how do you share your ideas? How do you share your opinions? Or how do you ask for directions? Or how do you engage with someone? So, vocabulary is what we define ourselves by knowing about something or someone, about the world, about a place. It's like a newspaper. When you open a newspaper, you get to know about different things or events that are happening in life. And that is how we know about it when we know about the different vocabulary or the different words we learn about. So it's all about exposing yourself, and it is like the earth 360 degrees. And
Hmm.
every single time the earth is turning, that is when we realize, okay, we have to also learn something new, something different. So that would be something we would say
That's
is
awesome.
vocabulary.
Wonderful. Well, that is the end of the session for Meet the Trainer. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you and having you here in the session today.
Thank you so much. And it was really an honor to see you and chat
Likewise.
to you. Thank you for everything.
Thanks to you. Well, so this is going to be the end of the session. Teacher Salma, thank you so much for your time once again.
You're
Take
welcome.
care. Stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Walaikum salam.
Thank you.